Mike McCarthy back on the sidelines. He'll be the Steelers' new head coach. We'll talk about that and more right now on Fantasy Football Today Express. Welcome, everybody. Adam and Jamie here on Monday, January 26th. Just saw two very competitive, very close games, different styles in the AFC and NFC championship games. But right now we're talking coaches here. And McCarthy had a really great offense in 3 of 5 years with the Dallas Cowboys. And those were the 3 years where Dak Prescott stayed healthy. So he's got a really good track record here. He may not be the most exciting hire, but do you like it for the Steelers, Jamie?
I do. It's still incomplete for me because of the quarterback situation. So when you start to just take a look at the Steelers, if Aaron Rodgers is not there, really the guys that we're looking at drafting, and maybe even if Aaron Rodgers is still there because of who's under contract, are DK Metcalf and Jalen Warren. Maybe the tight end comes into play if it's Freiermuth and they move on from Jonnu Smith. But I think at this point, Kenneth Gainwell's a free agent. They didn't develop a second wide receiver yet, in terms of 2025. So, we'll see if any of the guys that were there step forward. Calvin Austin, Roman Wilson, one of those type of players. But I think just in the case of what this team looks like right now, there's a little bit more hope offensively because we just didn't love the Arthur Smith offense. So if they get the right quarterback in place, Heath talked about this on the full-length episode we did on Monday. DK Metcalf could still be a very good fantasy wide receiver. I don't think the door is closed yet on him still competing to be a top 15 guy. I think maybe being top 5 is probably out of the question unless they go out and get an elite quarterback, but that's hard to expect. But I think Metcalf can still be drafted as a number 2 wide receiver, at least in that range, and produce like a top 20 guy. And Jalen Warren can still be potentially a solid number 2 running back. We'll see if Gainwell's brought back, if they want to keep him in on the roster. I don't think Caleb Johnson is going to take that much of a step forward and be better than Jalen Warren, but really it comes down to the quarterback. So there's a lot to like about what McCarthy has done. It's not just Dallas, obviously what he did in Green Bay with Aaron Rodgers and that group there. But if you look at it, I know you have the metrics in front of you in terms of when Dak Prescott, or the stats when Dak Prescott was healthy and what they were able to produce. So it could certainly be, I don't think it is an upgrade for them offensively, just based on what we saw with Arthur Smith, how Mike Tomlin liked to run his team. I think Mike McCarthy will do better things for that offense.
I hope so. I hope it's not like his time has passed kind of deal. Like Pete Carroll, I thought was going to, I know he's not a play caller or anything. I thought Pete Carroll was going to do good things with the Raiders, but I think his time had passed in Seattle, and it looked like they did the right thing by firing him, which was kind of controversial at the time. And he didn't work out. McCarthy, he's had great talent, right? He's had great talent on offense. It's almost like the opposite of Arthur Smith. And things got a little bit stale in that last year with Dak Prescott. They were only 18th in scoring in 2024, before his injury, and they finished in the 20s. So I know some people were critical of like his offense just being like very simple, kind of. I hope it's an upgrade, but I also don't know how they upgrade a quarterback. I mean, is there a quarterback out there that's better than Aaron Rodgers that they could get?
I mean, I think if you start to look at it, do they take chances on 2 of the guys that are probably going to be available, whether it's free agency or trade, in Kyler Murray or Tua Tagovailoa? I don't know if that's an upgrade. Is it going to be a Malik Willis who's going to be sought after as, what he did in his end of time with Green Bay? And I think if you're starting to connect the dots, there are 2 guys from Green Bay and Miami, and they're going to need a quarterback. So Malik Willis might want to go there and play for, front office guy and coach that there's some familiarity with. So look, we'll see. Senior Bowl starting this week. We're going to get to, find out more about the quarterbacks not named Mendoza, and who's going to be available as we look at first round caliber talent, and where the Steelers may or may not decide to go. And then, is it a Mac Jones? Is it a Jimmy Garoppolo? I'm trying to think of someone like the backup quarterbacks that could be bridge guys and turn into a Jacoby Brissett type situation. Tyrod Taylor, one of those type of guys. So there's just lots of different scenarios at play. You would expect that if McCarthy goes to Pittsburgh, where Aaron Rodgers, upon every exit interview, players in front office, we would like him back, or he was good for this franchise, he had a good season, blah, 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 everything that they were saying. It does make some sense that there's a connection between the 2.
All right, we'll come back and talk about the Dolphins' new offensive coordinator, the Ravens' new hire at head coach, what the Bills might do after this. Back here on FFT Express, Bobby Slowik was the offensive coordinator for the Texans for C.J. Stroud's first 2 seasons. Now he's been a member of the Dolphins organization, has been promoted to offensive coordinator under new head coach Jeff Hafley. Thoughts on this for the Dolphins?
So I believe Slowik, if I'm not mistaken, came to Houston from San Francisco, right?
Yeah.
So you have the LaFleur connection now. Slowik, they're all probably connected in some way, shape, or form, having either coached together in some previous stop or knowing each other. I don't think it's a bad thing. Anytime you see these coordinators, coaches, etc., comes down to what? Who's the quarterback?
Yeah.
So if they get the quarterback right, you hope that there's going to be progress. Now, in the case of Slowik, you saw a great rookie season for CJ Stroud. He was there for year 2 also, and there was a big step back. And so how much of that was Stroud? How much of that was the offense? How much of it was the offensive line, et cetera, et cetera? So there's not a lot to work with right now, Miami. You have a great running back. You have what could be a great wide receiver. You have an offensive line. I think that's probably going to end up being, if you want to look at PFF or whatever, middle of the pack would be my guess. Not great, not terrible. And so if they get the right quarterback in place, hey, Bobby Slowik could be awesome. If they get Tua Tagovailoa again, okay, how is he going to look running a different offense than Mike McDaniel? Because we really haven't seen that. The Brian Flores tenure really wasn't fair to Tua. I think you just have to judge Tua based on what we saw with McDaniel. So Slowik was part of that. Again, did they cultivate wide receivers after Tyreek Hill's injury? I think the answer is probably no. Malik Washington never really took a step forward. That was his role. He was the passing game coordinator. So to me, whenever you go from offensive-minded head coach to promoting from within, there's still questions. And again, Slowik's been an offensive coordinator before, but I think also you have to sort of say, still don't know what he is, because one good year, one bad year for CJ Stroud.
And let's finish with 2 openings for offensive coordinator and for head coach. One of them, anyway. You do have Jesse Minter, the Chargers defensive coordinator, going to the Ravens. But who do you want to see end up calling plays for Baltimore and Buffalo?
I think you want to see somebody who's going to open up the passing game even more. What we saw from Lamar with Todd Monken. I'm sorry, I don't have the names for you, but in the case of Todd Monken's system, and what we saw going from Greg Roman to Todd Monken, it was great for Lamar Jackson. So as long as he can still run, and I don't think that door is closed on him running, but did take a step back, did get injured, starting to get older. You start to worry about guys that do what he does, and as they age, it happened to Cam Newton rapidly. For example, a lot of guys typically get hurt. But if Lamar is going to still run enough, and by running enough, I think you got to be, what would you say, Adam, 600 plus yards for him?
For who? Kyler?
For Lamar Jackson to be
Lamar,
elite fantasy quarterback.
Yeah, maybe more. I mean, he's certainly capable of more, but 600 is a great season. Yeah, great season.
So I would say 600, because he's never been a rushing touchdown guy. That's not something that carries him. It's been more of his rushing yards. So it's not like Josh Allen, for example, who's going to get you.
Yeah, he doesn't do the goal line stuff.
Right. So it's not going to be both. He'll do enough, obviously, touchdowns, on the ground. But I think for Lamar Jackson, he's always been an underrated passer. I would like to see another pass catcher there, because it seems like Isaiah Likely is leaving. But Zay Flowers, Mark Andrews, I just don't think it's enough, even with what Rashad Bateman has done. Get somebody else in there to help Lamar. My guess is they run it back with Derrick Henry. So you're probably going to see a lot of similar concepts. I don't think they're bringing in somebody, at least doesn't make sense, to sort of reinvent the wheel there. So let's just say they had moved on from Monken and brought in, let's say, like an Arthur Smith. Like, that would have been like, oh my God, what are they doing? So probably something that's going to run a lot of similar concepts. Maybe they go outside the norm and get someone from the San Francisco Rams tree, who's available. I just think that, Jesse Minter probably brings in somebody that he's comfortable with, and somebody's going to be comfortable with Lamar.
Yeah, the reason I said Kyler when you asked that, because I was thinking Cliff Kingsbury would be, I think, a really good
yes, that's
fit,
a good call.
And he's worked with Kyler. He's had great season with Kyler, great season with Jaden Daniels. So I'd love to see
great season Mahomes in college.
And I'd love to see, Brian Dable go to Buffalo, just for some familiarity there. All right, let's wrap it up. Thank you very much, Jamey. Thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. And we will talk to you next time on Fantasy Football Today Express.